Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you a couple things that I use to never lose tracking when I'm scanning. The first is cloth, like so, or paper, that I crumple up to create all these wrinkles on the surface. And this is really helpful when you're scanning objects that is very symmetrical. For example, something like this, where if I scan one side of this and I move on to the other side, it will be too similar, and so the data will start replicating over and over again. And another thing that would be hard to scan would be something like this, which doesn't have enough surface area. And you'll often find that you'll have the tracking loss message show up over and over again for thin, small things like this. So having either paper, crumpled paper, or cloth on the background when you're scanning will help add features to the scan, and that will make sure that you're not losing tracking and that the data stays the same when you're doing the scan. So to clarify things, let's go into the scan software and start scanning to see what I mean.
So now we're in the scanning software, and I have the iScan Pro HD on hand. I opened up the left camera view so that you guys can see what I'm scanning, and I'm going to click the Start Scan button. And you can see in the preview that this is the first object that I showed you. Once I get a good distance, I can hit the scan button, and you'll see that when I'm going through the object starts to replicate. And as I said before, it's because the area that I'm scanning here and then the top area over here are very similar. So when it's replicating, when it's scanning, the data will just keep replicating itself, and you'll just get a mess. So now we're going to try and add more features to the background so that you don't get this huge mess of data. But again, the reason you're getting this is because when I'm scanning, the surfaces that I'm scanning are just too similar to one another, and that's causing the data to just get all jumbled. So I'm going to put the piece of cloth that I showed you on the ground, and I'm going to lie the object on top, and so all the wrinkles that are on that cloth will be used for the feature alignment to keep the tracking. So now when I start to scan, you can see that all those features are helping the scanner keep its position. And now I'm just going to try to fill in as much as I can of this top surface, and then move to scan the bottom surface. So this is really helpful because for a lot of things, because you can see that I'm not getting tracking loss issues anymore, and that's because there are a lot of features on the background which I can use to keep that tracking. And if I do get tracking loss issues, all I have to do is find the surface, and then it will align to that data. So now I have a good amount of data of the top surface. I'm going to get rid of the bottom by using the lasso tool, like this. And since I'm going to be scanning most of this again, I don't really have to worry too much about deleting data that's over here. And now I'm going to turn the object around and scan the next surface here, and then we're going to align it in the software to create a full 3D model. So first I'm going to generate the point clouds with speed so that it's fast. And then I'm going to go here on the left side and create a new project. Use the same settings, as this will let me to align the two projects together. And then I'm going to start the scan. And again, you can see that as I go through this, I won't get that same issue with the repeating surfaces because there are just a lot more features all around for tracking purposes. And now that I think I have enough data, I'll go ahead and delete. First, we'll go through the speed. So the second project is here. What we're going to do is we're going to delete the extra features. We have this one, and we have this one. Now we can go here to align, drag the first project there, second project there. And there are two things that we can try here. The first is the feature alignment. If that doesn't work, we'll do the manual alignments. Let's try that first. Unfortunately, as you can see, this is exactly why the original method without the wrinkle cloth underneath was giving us multiplying data. The two scans are just too similar, and if they try to align based on features, it would just replicate like that. So now we're going to do, so what we do have to do is we have to do the manual alignment. And so first point I'm going to try, so over here, one over here, and the last one, I think we can get it over here. So it looks like it did a pretty good job for the alignment based on these 3 points. There's still some holes, but for this type of objects, we can always go in and do the hole filling method later on, or we can just go ahead and do the watertight. Now the next thing we're going to do is the thin metal part that I showed you that doesn't have a lot of features. You'll find that if we just scan that, you'll get tracking lost showing up over and over again. And when we add that wrinkle cloth, it will solve that problem. So let's go ahead and start scanning that object. Now we're going to scan the second object. I did do some preparation for this one because it was very dark, so I applied some of the A-sub disappearing scan spray so that it's coated in a thin layer of white powder. And you can see that here in the camera view. It's appearing completely white on a black background. And in the preview, you can see that there's not a lot of surface area for the scanner to use to keep tracking. And if we start hitting the scan button, it's not going to scan anything because there's just not enough features here to justify the alignment. So you might run into this when you're scanning small things or thin things like this. And the issue, again, is that there are not enough features in that scan. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the cloth underneath this object, and that will add more features to the backgrounds so that we can actually start scanning it. So here we go. Once I hit the start button, it's just started to capture all the wrinkles on the background, and also capture the object itself. And all I have to do is just paint into the object while keeping a good focus on the background as well, since that is where all the features are. For this front part. And then same with this first object that we scanned, we are going to turn it around so that we can get the backside. We got most of it. You can see it did a much better job than if I were just to scan this by itself. Next, we'll generate the point clouds. And create a new project with the same settings. And start the preview. find a good distance. We just have to get rid of the background. Show the two scans next to each other, and then go into the alignment. And hope that this one can do the job. Fortunately, you cannot. So we're going to have to go in and find 3 similar points for the alignment to take place. And I think a good one is here towards the end, and maybe on the other side. Over here. There we go. It looks pretty well aligned. Click next to complete the process. And we have those 2 scans merged and ready to turn into a mesh. So it looks like we have some problems over here, but instead of going to watertight, we can always go back here, delete this mesh data, and click on watertight to manually fill in those holes in a better way. Or we can go back to the scan and continue to keep scanning so that we can fill in those areas. I hope I was able to show how the wrinkle cloth or wrinkle paper, if you use it as a backdrop, can add more features to objects that are very symmetrical when you're scanning, or to small objects that don't have enough features for the tracking or the alignment algorithm on our software. Next, we're going to talk about marker tracking and how we can use marker sheets to scan flat surfaces without any cleanup. I'll see you in that next video.